So last video we looked at Samsung's cheapest phone. Now it's Motorola's turn. This is the Moto G 2025. And if you're a person who's looking for the basics in a smartphone and to save as much money as possible on that smartphone, then Motorola offers one of the best options that you'll find in the United States. But what exactly are you getting in Motorola's cheapest phone at just $200? Well, let's look at it and find out. What's going on, guys? Ty Tech here, back again, and here's my review of the Moto G 2025. As always, guys, if you're new to the channel, come on in, don't be shy. And while you're here, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get this channel to 25K before the end of the year. Now let's take a closer look at Now let's take a look at Motorola's cheapest budget phone. On with the video. Now, with the Moto G 2025 being the most affordable phone that Motorola offers, Motorola narrowed down every last aspect of this phone down to its bare essentials, and you can see that clear as day, starting with the build of this phone. As to be expected with Motorola today, the Moto G 2025 is using that vegan leather back that Motorola has become known for at this point. One, to give users of this phone more grip if they decide to use this phone without a case, which I wouldn't recommend. More on that in a second. And two, for cheaper repairs if you're the kind of person who tear up your phone, you know who you are. The frame of the Moto G 2025 is made out of plastic with your SIM card / micro SD card tray on the left-hand side, your volume and power button / fingerprint scanner on the right-hand side. More on that in a second. And your speakers, charging port, and headphone jack are at the bottom. Then finally, on the front of the Moto Edge 2025, you'll get a 6.7-inch IPS LCD display with a 120 Hz refresh rate. Now, everything about the build of this phone screams I only cost $200. The frame of this phone is made out of plastic, like I said before. The display used in this phone is an LCD, so the colors you'll experience while doing things like watching content are gonna look kind of muted and lack any sharpness or contrast. Like, if you look close enough, you can see individual pixels on this display. Just like you can see the backlight bleeding around the sides of this display right next to those enormous bezels. The glass user protector display is only Gorilla Glass 3, which came out, hang on, checks notes, the same year I started puberty. So it's not the strongest, especially when compared to Gorilla Glass today, and it's the reason why I recommend using a case with this phone. And the Moto G 2025 has no official IP rating for water and dust resistance, just that it has a water repellent design, which means the vegan leather back probably won't be affected much by water, but this phone is 100% cooked if you happen to drop it in the toilet. However, I don't think the kind of person that's going to be picking up the Moto G 2025 is going to care about any of that stuff. The build of the Moto G 2025 is really light thanks to its plastic construction at only 193 grams. Combined with its smoother edges and soft leather back, this phone was very comfortable to use for long periods. This display, while lacking more saturated colors and more protective glass, is still really big at 6.7 inches. Plenty big enough for enjoying content or social media scrolling. Scrolling through social media is also buttery smooth thanks to this display having a 120 Hz refresh rate, and the peak outdoor brightness of the Moto G 2025 is higher than phones like the A16 at about 1000 nits. So the glare you'd get whilst using this phone outside isn't as bad. It's still bad, don't get me wrong, just not as bad. I said the same thing about this ISP LCD kind of display in my Moto G Power review, which you should check out and subscribe if you guys haven't already, because the kind of person that's actually going to be picking up these lower end budget model devices aren't going to be looking for the highest quality display possible. They're going to be looking for size, smoothness, and speed, and luckily the Moto G 2025 has enough of all three. However, I will be honest with you and let you know that what Motorola is packing inside the Moto G 2025 will have that speed lagging from time to time. Inside the Moto G 2025, you'll get a MediaTek Dimensity 6300 chip with 4 GB of RAM, up to 128 GB worth of storage with micro SD card expansion, and Android 15 right out of the box with this phone. And it's about as efficient as you would expect for a $200 budget Motorola phone. There was plenty of lag to be had. Just powering on this phone took a couple of minutes, I'll be honest with you. Movement between apps and menus felt a little bit like watching paint dry at times. And thanks to having just 4 GB of RAM, because there is no 8 GB of RAM version of this phone, This phone will slow down when overwhelmed, and it doesn't take a lot to overwhelm it. Like, I'll give the Moto G 2025 some credit. The MediaTek Dimensity chip inside this phone is actually powerful enough to download larger games like Asphalt 9, for example. So on one hand, the Moto G 2025 gets some credit for that, but on the other hand, it also runs and looks just like a first-gen Nintendo Switch. However, again, I have to review this phone with the proper context of the target consumer of a phone like this. And for $200, that person gets a pretty basic, clean, and simple take on Android, which honestly might be more preferable to them, especially if they're just looking for a phone to be a phone without all the bells and whistles thrown in. A simple phone with little bloatware set up for texting and calling your friends and family, some light Facebook scrolling, maybe playing some Shooty Skies whilst waiting for your colonoscopy.
All right. The doctor will be in a few minutes.
Checking some emails, and that's it. You get some options for some light customization, but nothing too crazy. The classic Moto features like wrist twist to open the camera and chop chop to turn on your flashlight are still here. Your fingerprint scanner and Face ID are slow but reliable biometric options. And you still get that little taste of Google's AI features, but none of Moto's greater AI features like what we saw on the Moto Edge 2025 a couple videos ago. Some lag is to be expected in a phone at this price point, but for the target consumer, which is honestly older individuals who really couldn't give a rat's ass about what kind of phone they have, as long as they have a phone in order to keep in touch with their loved ones and to take some photos and videos. But this is a $200 budget phone, so the photos and videos that you'll get are, well, with the Moto G 2025, you get a 50 megapixel wide angle main camera, capable of shooting 1080p video at 30 frames per second, and a 2 megapixel macro camera on the back, along with a 16 megapixel wide angle selfie camera. And all the photos and videos that you'll get with this phone are, well, that's kind of be expected for a phone of this price range. You do get some photos with poppy and vivid colors, and thanks to the optical image stabilization, videos are fairly smooth, along with the switching of the focal length being more fluid than I expected for a phone like this. But after that, the photo and video quality are... The sensor in your main lens is very small, so much that there isn't, if any, preserved detail in these photos once you zoom in, along with poor dynamic range in images with less light. For example, like on cloudy days, colors come out more muted and washed out. Selfies and portrait selfies look pretty good at first glance, but then these same problems creep in. Lots of bright and saturated colors, but as soon as you zoom in, like, why do I look like my skin is made out of pottery clay? And you can literally see the blur in my separation from the foreground to the background, like I'm Naruto and channeling my chakra or something. And lastly, selfie videos struggled with color processing and overexposure when too much light entered the lens. You can see these bursts of light coming in and out at the upper left-hand corner because the sensor in your selfie camera isn't big enough to process all of it. But again, the proper context is needed when reviewing a phone like the Moto G 2025. The cameras on the Moto G 2025 are good enough for being able to capture a memory and be able to go back and look at it later. And for the target consumer for a phone like this, that's all they need. That's all they're going to need. They'll also get all the battery life that they'll need to get through an entire day with the Moto G 2025, because inside the Moto G 2025, you do get a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with the option for 30-watt wired charging. There is no option for wireless charging, which is to be expected, as that's one of the first things to get the axe to make cheap phones like this. However, you'll get a full day's worth of battery life with a little bit of juice left in the tank with the Moto G 2025. Not enough to go into the next day without charging it, so you will have to charge it at night before you go to bed. But I feel like most of us do that anyway, and for the target customer for this phone, as long as they have enough juice in the tank during the day for calling and texting their loved ones, some social media browsing, Amazon shopping, looking at some emails, that's basically the summation of uses for the kind of person who's going to pick up this phone. And as long as they have enough juice in the tank for all that, they're going to be set. Not to mention this phone being available for next to nothing with a new line or an upgrade on all three of the big carriers and most of the prepaid ones too. This is not a phone for someone who's going to be on their phone all day long. This is a phone for someone who needs to do what they need to do, check some emails, return some correspondence, and then get the hell back to their real life. maybe get lost in some Candy Crush for a couple of hours, but as long as their battery life lasts until they go to bed, that's all they'll need, and the Moto G 2025 does that. Overall, the Moto G 2025 is exactly what it looks like. From the build of the phone to the box it comes in, the Moto G 2025 is an affordable smartphone with all the essentials a person would need simply to stay connected with the outside world and nothing more than that. A large, buttery smooth display for watching videos and scrolling through social media, an efficient enough processor for navigating through a clean and simplified OS, even with the lag, enough battery life to get you through the day, passable cameras for capturing the moments you want to remember, even valuable and useful add-ons like an SD card slot and a headphone jack. Two things that people spending 5 times what this phone costs don't even get anymore. But for $200, I would not recommend this phone. I would actually recommend that you guys pick up the Galaxy A16 if you only have $200 to spend for a couple of different reasons. Both of these phones have completely different mission statements, with Motorola being more focused on function with the Moto G's grippy back and dull colors, while Samsung is more focused on fit and fashion with the A16's gradient on its glossy back. The Moto G 2025 has a bigger and smoother feeling display at 6.7 inches and a 120Hz refresh rate. But if you only have $200 to spend, I feel like the target consumer for phones like these would appreciate the brighter and more saturated colors while watching content on a phone like the A16, especially since the display is still pretty big and still pretty smooth at 6.5 inches and having a 90Hz refresh rate. But my biggest reason for recommending the Galaxy A16 over the Moto G 2025 is the difference in software support. 6 years for the A16, which is crazy for a phone like this anyway, versus 2 years from Motorola. If you're someone who's on a budget and you only have $200 to spend on a new phone and you want to make that $200 stretch as long as possible, go with the Galaxy A16, especially since Samsung makes an 8GB of RAM version of that phone, which Motorola doesn't even offer for the Moto G 2025. At the end of the day though, if you are on a budget and you pick up the Moto G 2025, you'll get a phone with a durable design, a big display, extras if you can't afford to buy or don't want to spend more on a flagship device, which are things we should get if we pay more for those devices, but anyway, and a clean and simple software experience with some, we'll say, usable cameras. I say the Moto G 2025 deserves a final grade of like a C+, because $200 for 2 years of support, I see a better option for you. But guys, that's gonna do it for my review of the Moto G 2025. If you or anyone you know are looking for an affordable budget model phone with all the essentials that you would need in order to keep in touch with your friends and family, a large display, a durable design, and enough battery life to get you through the day, I'll leave some shopping links in the description below for you guys. But you know what I always say, the choice is yours. Make your move. But if the Moto G 2025 doesn't feel like the move for you, you want a phone with better water and dust resistance, a better display, and better battery life, go ahead and check out my review of the Moto G Power 2025 on your left. Or if you want to see what Samsung's cooking up, go ahead and check out my review of the Galaxy A16 on your right. And don't forget to subscribe on the way. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Ty Tech. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.